Hi everybody, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going vintage and it's easier than you think. In fact, vintage I think is the easiest art journal pages to make. So we are working on my 9x12 Canson Mixed Media art journal page, and to get vintage I'm going to use a paper bag. How simple can that be? It can be any kind of paper bag. This one I just was packing when I bought something that was breakable. I'm going to wrinkle it up, crinkle it up, and then put it on the page. This is giving me that brown vintage type color, that neutral zone, and it's also going to give me some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful texture. Plus, bonus, it's using something from the something that would be recycled. Please, if you're not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button, click on the bell, and to be notified of upcoming videos. When you do these things, you help me grow my channel, which means I get to spend more time making more videos. So I'm just ripping these strips. Really, it doesn't matter. Now here's the other thing that I'm going to add to make this vintage. These are just random numbers that I typed using an old English, old newspaper font that I downloaded from dafont.com. I blew it up and I'm just going to add this to the background. So if you don't have a number stamp, this is an easy way of doing it. You can make it one way, print it off in different sizes, keep it in your stash ready to go, and looks great on all sorts of mixed media and art journal pages. So now that I have basically the idea of where I'm going to put things, I am getting up my fluid matte medium and just gluing it down. I'm keeping those wrinkles with that brown paper because I want that. I'm layering the papers one on top of another because, again, that will add texture to the end product, and I want to go vintage with this page. So I want grunge and texture and all sorts of wonderful additions to my background. Vintage is easy because, one, look, we can use inexpensive items, and two, it's very forgiving because you don't want it perfect. You want it grungy. You want it looking old and tattered. So we can give up. We're not really risking anything. Now you could do the same thing with this and not be doing this neutral color scheme that I have. Or you could create a background like this and put something else on it. So now I am going to add even more texture, and I grabbed this stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. It's called Magic Ladder, and I am just putting TCW modeling paste through it in 3 or 4 areas. I kind of like the pattern of this Magic Ladder one. It looks kind of resembles the ripped strips of paper that I have there, but really I wanted some kind of smaller scale textural item that I could build up the grunge in. Always, 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 when you use modeling paste with your stencils, take time to clean them. Otherwise, it may wreck them. Now this is a DIY stamp that I made, and I will link that video for you. And I'm just stamping with some black acrylic paint. I'm putting it on with a makeup sponge there, and I'm just stamping. This is, again, adding something to the background. Now everything you see here will not be seen at the end, but little bits of it are peeking through. And that's one of the wonderful things about mixed media, because you get this little bit of some numbers that are in the background, a little bit of the stenciling, the texture, and it just all comes together. And again, I'm spraying it with my Murphy's oil soap and just cleaning it. Once this is completely dry, I want to give it a base coat of color. And since I am going neutral, I'm just kind of neutralizing this with unbleached titanium and I'm just going across the whole page. Now, some of this, it's just because the unbleached titanium is a little bit opaque, it's knocking it back, softening the harshness of the black, which I'm okay with. I don't want that to be the forefront. I want that to be something peeking through, hinting at. So I'm just adding this as a good neutral. So here is the focal image. I don't know where I got this scrapbook page. I think I was gifted it. And my goal this year was to use some of this stuff. So I plan on using it. Now it had this, there were 3 letters stacked together, too big for my substrate. So I cut off one. I was playing with the idea of tucking it in somewhere else. End up using just 2 of the letters. But the letter, in real life, there is a teal blue brown tones to it. So I want to bring that into the background. And to do that, I'm going to use my Inktense blocks. Now, outside of the acrylic paints, my Inktense blocks are my favorite mixed media medium. They are permanent when they are dry, but they act like watercolor. So you get those benefits. So I'm just grabbing a color that is close to what was in my focal image. And Inktense blocks are so easy to use. Here's how. I'm just scraping it on the page and then activating it with water. Because it's watercolor, or like watercolor, it activates, and look at it go into all the nooks and cranny of that texture we put in with the modeling paste. I'm just adding more as I go. I just scrape it over, activate it, either with water on a brush or spraying it. Now, you have to be careful because if you put too much water, it's just going to take a lot of drying time. And some of that modeling paste, since it hasn't really cured days and days, it's going to soften as well. So you're going to see me bring out the heat tool, and I kind of apply water and the heat tool at the same time, so the page doesn't get too wet. So I'm just working my way. I'm adding it to the texture. I'm loving the colors. It's going well with that baseline color. I'm looking at my focal image. How close am I to that color? There we go. I'm just adding a little bit of color. Now, Inktense blocks are translucent, so it's everything behind it still kind of shows through. Now I'm just building up the intensity of the color. You put on a little bit, then you can let it dry, come back, add more. Build it up in certain areas, make some darker or lighter. And in a minute, you're going to see me grab a blue and mix it in with the teal. It's more of a navy, and it's giving that two-tone. Remember, I really like multiple tones. I don't want it to look flat. I want interest. And one of the ways to build interest is, like here, I'm adding the blue to it. It's kind of a dark navy. And I'm just putting it in some areas. And in real life, the focal image has more of that blue in it than teal. Every layer I add adds something. But I'm far from done, so let's keep watching. Now I want to add a little bit more brown or gold to the background. Again, I don't want it just that flat unbleached titanium, so I'm adding it. Now the one thing with my Inktense blocks, I'm not really fond of a lot of the browns. So I do end up using some of my acrylic paint and just water it down. You can get the same effect that way. And again, using different types of brown, different shades of brown, and then I'm mixing it in. Now the Inktense block, it is permanent when it's completely activated and completely dry, but I can manipulate it right now. So if I'm coming in with the brown in there, it's activating a little bit of that teal and blue and mixing a little bit, and it's blending, which gives me a whole other tone. So I'm just playing with it till I get a background that I love. But I know I'm also going to be able to manipulate and change the focal image. Now I want to grunge it up, so I'm grabbing a Ranger blending foam that's on my spool with Velcro, and got black acrylic paint, and I'm very lightly rubbing over top of all the textured areas. Now that means the modeling paste, that means the brown paper bag that was crinkled up, that means the layers of the collage papers that I used. If there's texture on there and you rub on it, it's going to bring it out, and adding the black here really grunges this up, makes it so much more vintage. You get somewhere you don't want it, you can wipe it off, and since everything's permanent underneath, I can do that. So I'm just adding it, and you can see all the grunge and the beauty of this vintage. Then I'm edging my page with the blending foam. I've got acrylic paint on there. It just frames the page. And then I'm going to edge my focal image as well. Now this is just fairly thick scrapbook paper. I'm going to venture a guess that this is from a Stamperia set. It's kind of standing out a little bit. Then I'm just doing a little bit more shading around the top. And then I want to make sure this letter stands out, so I'm going to do some shading on top of the scrapbook page. Now here I didn't put a coat of clear gesso or even matte medium. That would have turned it into a non-porous surface, and it may have worked well. This wasn't so bad because it's a good quality scrapbook paper. So I was able to make that letter stand out a little bit more without skipping that step. But because I'm using this as a focal image, not just as a background, I want it to stand out. So that's why I'm adding the shading at this stage. Then I decided I wanted to add a little bit of color to this and make it match the colors that I have put into the background. So I've grabbed the teal that I use and the blue, I'm mixing it, I have a little pool of water, and I'm just giving this a wash. So that letter, you know, with the browns and everything, now matches my background a little bit more. So don't be afraid to tweak your focal image. What the artist that created it has put there is simply a starting point. Now everything is working so well together. Thinking I'm going to put that there, but you know what? I'm not done. I decided I needed to add some script. So I grabbed my script stamp and I'm putting black acrylic paint on it and just adding a little bit of script here and there. One, I just love script and letters in my backgrounds. And two, it really goes with the vintage feel because there's script on the envelopes. However, you know, some of that's a little bright, so I do knock that back with a wash of color on top later on. There's a little too much of it, but if you don't have this focal image, and how would you? I don't even know where I got it. You can create the background, the same colors if that's what you like, using similar stencils, use what you have, and then find a focal image, a butterfly. You know, these colors are very, very neutral. There's lots of focal images that would go with it from lots of different scrapbook books or free printables or a napkin. I'm giving you the steps, basic color schemes, techniques. You make it your own. So now I want those letters to stand out even more. So I am shading on the background around the letters. And this is just giving it more, it's giving it shadows and making it stand out from my background. So this gives our focal image a little bit more presence, I guess, on the page. And I just go around and around and I add. I might put one layer of this, I might let it dry, add more if I decide that it needs more. Now there's a lot of texture on this background, which is why I use gel medium, not fluid medium, to glue down the focal image. So I wanted to put a sentiment, and I thought of, because it's the old letters, vintage, I thought of the saying, remember when. So I am stamping that out with black acrylic paint, that's what's on the makeup sponge, onto a piece of the excess ply of napkin. And then I'm going to water cut that out and glue it onto my page. Now I use fluid matte medium to glue it down, and as I put it down, it doesn't have a whole lot of presence on the page. It's very distant, and I'm not sure I like it. But I thought, okay, I just move on while I'm thinking about whether I like that or not, and I grab some gold paint on a makeup sponge, and I'm applying it ever so lightly, again, on the high spots of the page. Now the gold goes really well with the yellow that's in the background, and it's adding some bling, and it really makes that texture pop. And when I started using that gold, I thought about a sentiment that I had in one of my sentiment packs, and then I decided to change the sentiment that I use, because the remember when isn't showing up a whole lot. But just by adding that little bit of gold, my brain went some other way. So have a plan for a page, but don't be afraid to take the detour take the path that the page leads you to. That's how we learn. So I'm loving that texture. I'm loving the background here, the absolute beautiful vintage. Now, since I decided that I don't want that saying, I'm just adding a little bit of brown acrylic paint on top. That's just making it so you can't see the letters that I just applied. And then I'm adding a little bit of that brown other places because I want it to all work together. And you don't want one color just in one spot. I didn't quite have that brown shade elsewhere. So I'm adding a little bit of that brown everywhere. Again, it just grunges it up. It makes it even more vintage. And I go to my Ocean Commotion digital sentiment pack, and I grab the one, Not All Treasure is Silver and Gold. Do you see where I got the gold from when I put the gold on? Now it's white. There's no place for white on my page. It's all subdued and grungy and vintage colors. So I give it a wash of unbleached titanium. Once that's dry, I give it a little bit of another wash with just gold, just to give it a little bling. Gold is very translucent, so it doesn't really change the color. The text isn't bold black. Then I decide to cut off some of the words so that there's less paper. And then I glue that all down with fluid matte medium. Not all treasure is silver and gold. Letters from the past, history. It's treasure, memories. Those are treasures. So that's where my brain went. I always like to find the perfect sentiment for the page. For me, that's an integral part of art journaling, which is why I make the sentiment packs. I make them for myself to use them in my art, and they are available for purchase at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a link in the description box below where you can get my sentiments, you can get some mixed media kits that I've developed, as well as mixed media and art journaling supplies and napkins. Now I'm shading around the sentiment. So once again, thank you if you are a subscriber. Please consider subscribing if you aren't. Give me a comment, ask me a question, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, go get creative. I love this background. I could create this background and put something, a totally different focal image on it. Thanks for watching.